A warm welcome and a good evening, and may the peace and blessings of the divine shine upon all of us here tonight for the third episode of the HA TikToks organized by the Harmony Center of the Religious Council of Singapore. My name is Shireen, and it is my pleasure to be moderating this session tonight. For those who are joining us for the first time, you may know more about the HA TikToks by checking out our first episode, which explains the concept in more details. Links will be shared with you in the comments on the Facebook comments below or in the chat box in our Zoom platform. However, for the benefit of those who are joining us live for the first time, these sessions are really just an exploration of what makes us tick and what ticks us off, of course, in relation to the theme and the topic of discussion. And the main theme that we have been exploring over the past weeks has been navigating safe space, strengthening faith and family ties in COVID-19. Now, to bring us up all to speed, in the first episode, we discussed how faith guides us to continue living joyfully with mindfulness, compassion, and trust in spite of the difficulties of the new norm. In the second episode last week, we focused on positive parenting and the need for a support system to ease the difficulties of working parents who have to juggle between multiple roles in the new norm. Tonight, we explore the topic of family and displacement. We look at faith and positive aging, particularly in times of COVID-19. Now, allow me to set the context. Singapore is an aging society, and statistics show that our seniors in our midst will make up almost half of Singapore's population by 2050. At the same time, Singapore is also transforming itself digitally. And while the original roadmap to become a smart nation was meant to be done in gradual phases, the unprecedented pandemic radically changed this timeline. We all found ourselves having to adopt advanced digital solutions just to continue with our basic daily activities. This reality impacted our seniors the most, and many were left struggling as they were expected to use their smartphones in more ways than they even knew how to, and it was expected of them overnight. Even before the circuit breaker measures kicked in, the regular activities for our seniors were disrupted, and they could no longer spend time with their friends and families in familiar hangout places, including places of worship, which was very significant because places of worship and faith was a very important resource for helping them keep the faith and remain spiritually resilient, particularly in their golden years as they go through difficult times. Naturally, they began to feel helpless, vulnerable, and feel a sense of displacement. They struggle to keep up with the digital pace within the four walls of their home. During the circuit breaker measures, there were instances of seniors being fined for breaching safe distancing rules. And while some criticized them for saying that they were ignorant and unreasonable, others came quickly to their defense, calling Singaporeans to exercise a bit more empathy and to be a bit more understanding. Now, seniors are not the only ones who are affected. In fact, caregivers are also affected. And the question really is that we would like to focus on tonight is, how can faith and the art of acceptance help caregivers facilitate a positive experience, as positive as can be in our current context, for our seniors during this difficult times? How can faith and family support ease the anxieties that our seniors must be feeling? As we prepare ourselves for the opening of phase 3 and the easing of circuit breaker measures, how can our seniors resume their activities in a safe manner? And so tonight, Our panel of experts and also our viewers, both on Zoom and also on Facebook, will discuss together how faith and family play a vital role in helping our seniors cope with these new realities. As our panelists present their thoughts, do share with us your comments and questions and feelings in the comments section on Facebook and in the chat box on Zoom. Allow me now to introduce our speakers for tonight, Dr. Bibi Jan. Dr. Bibi Jan has been an educator for almost 40 years, and she's been serving as a teacher, as a head of student development, and a school counselor. She has a PhD in education from University of Durham, UK, and 2 master degrees, one in education from NUS and the other in guidance and counseling from James Cook University. She's also a trained family and addiction counselor. And as a social activist, she is active in various community services and is a co-founder of the Network of Community Practitioners, Club Heal, and also Human Hearts. Her extensive involvement in community work has led her to be conferred with the Public Star Award in 2017 by the President of Singapore, no less of an honor. Our second speaker for today is Mr. Devanand Ramasandaro. Mr. Devanand has been an active volunteer in the Hindu community for more than 20 years, and he has been mostly engaging the Hindu youth through various outreach programs. Apart from an academic degree, Mr. Devanand also has completed a 2-year diploma course in Hinduism study in 2008, and he currently volunteers at the Hindu Hub as a Hinduism teacher. He works in the social service industry and is a part-time songwriter and music producer. The sharing by our 2 speakers will be based on the questions that you have seen here on the screen. So without further ado, allow me now to invite our first speaker, Dr. Bibi Jan, for her sharing. Dr. Bibi Jan, please.
Can you all see the screen now?
Yes, we see the screen.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, Shireen, for the very kind words. I think it's a real pleasure to be here to share not so much my expertise, but also my experience working with people, especially during this COVID period, because as a counselor, we are really at the ground working with a various segment of the family, not just the children in school, but also the family and the elderly at home. So let me first start by saying salam to everybody and good evening to all my distinguished panel speaker as well as distinguished discussants. I would like to congratulate the Harmony Center for coming up with this idea. I think it's a very good platform for us to share because this is really unprecedented event that never in the history of our society here in Singapore and also the world that we are having such a big scale pandemic. Okay. As I think we all are aware that this is the third episode of our Harmony TikTok series. So I just for those of you who have not are not familiar with all the 3 episodes, so I just listed them down, and they're all talking about a global pandemic and how it affects the community and the role of our faith in helping us to cope with all the challenges, right? Okay, for the today's sharing within this 10 minutes period, I know I'm very conscious of time. I'm just given 10 minutes, so I'm going to share with you the outline for today's sharing. One would be refocus on the concepts and definitions. And I'm not going to be very operational in terms of definition, but just to ensure that we are all on the same page. And then we will revisit briefly the challenges faced by families during the circuit breaker as well as the post-COVID period, especially now when we have to learn to manage all the new norms. And then we have the third part will be highlighting some of the issues and concerns regarding the senior citizens and their vulnerabilities. And finally, I will touch very briefly on the roles of faith, family practices, and values to help our seniors cope with these new realities.
Dr. Bibijan, apologies
Yes.
to interrupt. You may want to enlarge the screen or maybe try resharing again.
Okay. Just give me 1 minute.
No problem.
How do I enlarge the screen? Is the screen too small for you? Because
No, it's not full screen yet.
Oh, it's not full screen yet?
Yeah.
Okay. Just hang on. I have to find my IT personnel here to help me.
Sure.
Enlarge the screen. This screen is not enlarged.
Right now we are at presenter's view.
Oh, this presenter's view. I think we have to. I think we have to go to this.
Oh, are you sharing the screen?
Yeah, I'm sharing the screen. So this is what I went to just now.
You're on Zoom, right?
Yep.
Just see the screen.
Okay, we can now see part 1. We are now on slide 4.
Right, we are not slide 4.
Yes. Okay, we can see. Perhaps you may want to proceed even if it's not on full screen. It's okay. Yep.
Can you see now? Is it clear enough? Big enough?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry about that. My apology. So there will be 4 segments of this 10 minutes talk. So this will be my, I'm segmentizing it so it's easy for us to see. So some of the simple terms and definitions that I'm highlighting here is just to set parameters. Family and the concept of displacement, which I think Shireen had mentioned a bit, and faith and positive aging. Right. So in the concept of Islam, the concept of family in Islam, if you were to look at the root word, it's actually the word usra, which means family. And this word denotes unity, closeness, and protection. These are the 3 features which constitute the meaning of family in the context of the Arabic word usra. So so this word refers to a group of people connected together through close ties that keep them and maintain their unity and identity, sense of belonging, and also shared purpose. So in the context of family, the conventional meaning of family, it could be, we are just talking about typical man, woman, and children when they are legally married. That's the concept of family. But here we can also talk about family in a larger context. For example, just now when I asked Liana who are the audience of this program, so Liana said most of them come from the circle of those in the interfaith group and all that. So that itself is another concept definition of family. So the Islamic concept of family is a group that emerged from the unison of men and women through a marriage contract, and that children they are born from it. I think this is not peculiar to Islam. This is a universal concept. And Islam is not just about rites and ritual, but it's a way of life that looks at every aspect of human life. Just briefly. Now, in terms of displacement, in this context refer to an unconscious defense mechanism, taking one emotion, usually a very hostile or angry emotion, from one situation and dropping it into another, shifting displeasure away from ourselves and the person causing the stress to a less threatening target. So in this context, it is essentially like a kind of a punching down when we feel that someone of authority, power, of equal standing has harmed us, inverted comma, has harmed us. Now, with this COVID, there are a lot of new things that happen to us. Our movement is restrained. Our relationship is restrained. There are a lot of normal things that we do every day are all affected. Now, how do we cope with such a situation? And displacement could also mean the act of moving someone to another place when war requires people to move from their homes due to danger. It could be some big event of like natural disaster. So these are situations where people can be physically displaced, people can be socially displaced, people could be emotionally displaced. So there are many concepts. So I just wanted to highlight this issue so that we all understand when we talk about family displacement in the context of our discussion tonight is due to the enforcement of the circuit breaker, the social distancing, and whatever they come together with all these new rulings, so to speak, and that has affected anyone in any form, physically, socially, emotionally, economically, and spiritually. Now, let me go to part two, which is actually looking into the how the families are affected by the CB and the post during the and also during this period of post-COVID. I think the realities today, we are confronted with the greatest disruption, as I said, of our lifetime throughout the world, and everyone is grappling. And as the pandemic continues to evolve, it is important to address the needed changes in the months ahead and in respect to the senior citizens. And what I can say that everyone is affected. It is a matter of degree. Some affected more, some affected less. So it depends on the situation and the status of individual and the kind of support that we receive. And it also depends on the capacity to manage and being supported. Now, both internal as well as external factors. So again here, faith is one of that reflect the internal strength that one can have in order to cope with all these challenges. So external factors would be family support, community support, national support, and so on. So I'm just giving you all this terminology, setting the perimeters so that when we move further to discuss, then we are able to have a very positive engagement. Now, the repercussion of COVID-19 had led all of us to make adjustment, transitions and adjustment. I think even school children as young as early childhood, early childhood students, people in the play groups, those they are affected, and even primary school children all the way to adults. I think this is something that, as I said, is not easy, but we all have to go through it together. Now, if we were to look at World Health Organization, why elderly become the focal point? It's because if you were to look at the bar chart, the number of people who actually affected in terms of getting the diseases, sickness, as well as those who actually died, mostly are the elderly. 8 out of 10 COVID-19 deaths reported in the United States have been in adults 65 years old and older. And this has implication because Singapore is also a society where we are an aging population. We are moving into that. And we find that we are also grappling with this issue. Now, in the context of developing older adults and people with underlying health condition, those who have underlying health condition, be it hypertension, stroke, whatever physiological issue that they are having, they are at a higher risk of developing severe forms of COVID-19. So again, I don't blame sometimes the hospitals, for taking extra precaution, especially in Singapore, where they limit the number of visitors, they even track, now tracking, individual tracking. Some people make a big hoo-ha about being tracked. Anywhere they go, any place at any time. But I think, as again, this is a new norm that we have to manage. Okay, and besides that, besides physiological issue and physical issue, according to WHO, they are close to 1 billion people have mental disorder, assuming that they are as many as half of the populations young people as well as old people. Then you find that the number of old people we don't have to include those with dementia and all that. We are just talking about those who have mental health issue, mental condition. So this is also something that we have to look when we talk about their well-being. Okay. Now, part 3, we are going into the issues and the concern about the senior and their vulnerability. Now, in the case of Singapore, the vulnerable groups are not just elderly who are disabled, who are frail, or even pre-frail stage. They're also normal, healthy people. They are not. They don't necessarily have any physiological issue, but they are socially isolated. Either they stay on their own, or they just some of them actually they may not stay on their own, but they stay in the elderly home. But we may think that they were a group of people, but some of them are still socially isolated and also digitally estranged. So these are some of the category of vulnerability of elderly that we're talking about. Now, with pandemic COVID-19, they are unable to exploit some of the online world, which has helped the younger generations bear the CB period, thereby making them the most vulnerable group. I mean, I went to some polyclinics, sometimes I see them struggling just to get a Grab, to get a taxi, because they were waiting there hoping that the taxi came to pick them up, but they realized that somebody has already booked the taxi because they are not aware of it. So this is the real issue that we are facing. Now, in Singapore, 90% of the COVID-19 deaths have also been among the seniors. So this trend is quite similar to the one in States, as highlighted by WHO, World Health Organization, with 1 in 6 developing severe symptoms and needing intensive care. Okay. So again, these are some statistics I just share with you in terms of the numbers. People who are, the older you are, the more vulnerable you become. So people who are in the 60 to 69, 70 to 79, and 80 and above. In the case of, for me personally, my mother is 84 years old. So actually during that COVID period, we were all worried about her because even though she's staying with my sister, but we were not allowed to visit her. And even if we were to visit her, we were scared that, because our presence could also affect her health, even though, I mean, she has history of some medical issue. So that brings us a real anxiety when we visit her. Now, the physically, mentally, and financially challenged elderly, some have some multiple issues. They are not financially agile or technologically savvy in their daily lives. I see some of them, those who are in the lower income group, and they are the one I see them struggling because they just can go to work. Some of them, working in as a cleaner in some childcare, and childcare was closed at that time, early childhood schools, and of course there are some places they have to go. So again, if they're above 60, the employer sometimes sort of advise them not to come because they do not want to take the risk as well, because there's a standing order SOP that they have to work at home, some of them. But cleaning services, I mean, you can't work at home, you have to be there. So again, there's a lot of dilemma there in terms of meeting their bread and butter, and also being at home and have to take care of the family. And then there also a case of low social support and low SES significantly increased the odds of depressive symptoms among among this group of people. I came across elderly who are highly educated, who are very comfortable. I mean, I'm not going to talk about these people because I think they are okay. They are pretty okay. They are well supported in every sense of the word. But they are segment of the community that we have to focus on. And this is what we're talking about. They need to depend on family and community support. So if you were to go to our local newspapers and media, you can see these are some of the clips, some of the newspaper clip that I actually extract. Some of them literally facing the wall, literally facing the wall. I mean, you can see them during the normal period, those who have the money, those who have the capacity, they are able to go to library and sit down and relax, read books. Some of them even go to Marina Bay Sands and or Resort World Sentosa to gamble. Fine, that's their way of spending their leisure time. But during COVID period, they can't do anything, be it the higher income or the lower income. So again, the coping skills of different people play a part here. And we see this particular place some of them actually making some commotions about going to the market. They have to bring documents and then odd days, even days, and some of them they are not aware of all these small things, small print. So when they go there, they were asked to go back because they don't meet that particular criteria on that particular day. So this a real issue that facing day to day. It doesn't have to be a big issue, but small issue day to day event that's affecting them. And besides the physiological issues and other physical illnesses, there are also issues that affect them. Stress and depression. We don't have to wait for COVID to have stress and depression. So with COVID, it's perpetuating, it's accentuating this stress and depression among the elderly. So feeling of loneliness, sadness, dejections, and helplessness. And especially when some of the adult children are working at home and grandchildren are also at home. So you find that if you have a big house, fine, no problem, you have a space. But sometimes if you don't have that privilege to live in a big house, bigger room, private place for you to study, home-based learning as well as work from home. Now all these affect the home dynamics, the day-to-day interaction, the quality of interaction at home. So many undetected and not expressed among the elderly. Many of them some of them, they just choose to keep quiet and sit down at one corner because they know that everybody is so engaged. So I think this is where we have to be a little bit more sensitive. Sometimes it's not that we do not want to attend to all these needs, but sometimes we ourselves are busy with our own work. That's what I normally hear from everybody. So I think a little bit of compassion, a little bit of empathy, a little bit of sensitivity is very important. I think this COVID has brought a new idea for all of us to see that life is so volatile, life is so uncertain. I mean, in the past, we're talking about VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. But with the COVID, this idea of VUCA is more pervasive. So we find that people has suddenly lost this cheerfulness, especially among some elderly. In the past, you can see children, student, poly student, ITE student, secondary student will go to the elderly homes and entertain them during the National Day, Chinese New Year, and what have not. But now they can't do that anymore. So again, you find that for some, it is really a real life change for them. Now, this severe anxiety, as we know that actually mental health is also affected the physical health, and likewise, physical health also affect mental health. So they're all connected. So it's very difficult to compartmentalize, the problems of these elderly and the seniors. Now, changing older people's daily routine is one of the things that we're talking about, the care and the support they receive. They are being challenged by requirement to spend more time at home, lack of physical contact with other family members, friends, colleagues. In the past, they can just go down, void deck, sit at the elderly corner, chit chat with friends. But now they just couldn't. Their ability to stay socially connected affected them, and this sense of restraint, loneliness could also lead to mental health issue with that I mentioned this. Now, there are also temporary cessation of employment and other activities, and anxiety and fear of illness and death. That's why I think sometimes with all this WhatsApp, with the social media, a lot of things going around, and there are some, to a certain extent, there are some fears among them. Well, I'm not going to describe whether good or bad, but as I said, different people take it differently. And there are big narrative going on at the local newspaper about how some seniors behave, in a very irresponsible way. And but I think that is not my purpose to discuss here. But I just want to highlight. I think we should not just focus. If we are talking about people who behave irresponsibly, it's not just elderly. Anyone. I think we should not generalize to or focus on certain group of people or certain group of segment of the society. Now, the last part, okay, I think I have just about few more minutes. How does it affect the Muslims? I think for me, being the Muslims, I just like to share with you very briefly the conventional social norms and practices, as well as the new social norm and practices. I think we all know that Muslims, they actually celebrate. They come from the large extended family, so family is part of their life. Everything they eat together, they pray together as a family. So you find that with the new social norm, visits and even contact with the family members are very much restricted. Some even feel very conflicted. However, we are very thankful to technology, because with technology we can use Skype, we can use video phone call, Zoom, house party, you name it. We have all kind of gadgets, and also tools to get connected. But again, some people say nothing like seeing in person. Now, we also used to shake hands, hugging, kissing. Every time after prayer, we do that. Every time we visit elderly, we do that. Now we can't. So minimize contact and social distancing. And again, part of the Muslim, being Muslim, when we hear someone getting sick or they pass away, it's also like part of our culture, our tradition. We were the first one to visit who are sick or just give birth, but now we can't do. Likewise for marriage and all that, because we are a social being, and social activity is part of our culture. So now limiting the visit to hospital. Again, sometimes you can only have family members can come, the rest are not allowed. Congregational prayer 5 times a day, plus the Friday prayer. Now these are also something new. And um, when the Muslims have to go to mosque and they have to book a slot. For the young one, no problem. They can just have their mobile phone and they book. But for the elderly, some of them may not have the technology to go to the mosque and book a slot. Now, death, prayer, burial rituals, even for me, because I have a case where my husband passed away and I can't go to visit the cemetery because at one time the whole cemetery was closed. So I used to visit him every other week So now I just can't. So of course it's affect me as also because I'm also undergoing a sense of loss and grief. So I personally go through it. So yeah, I can understand how others feel. And then the annual pilgrimage and Umrah and the Ramadan, the Iftar, the Eid celebration, all this has affected us. Now, how do we respond it? I mean, for most of us, we just observe the teaching of Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet, peace be upon him. I mean, we all have to learn to be patient. I think all of us, I think it's not peculiar to the Muslim alone. And there's a lot of sacrifice here and there. But I see a trend among the Muslims. The zakat, the charity, the sadaqah have gone up, because those who have, they feel that they have to, and crowdfunding is very common now. Anybody who need help, we just text each other, WhatsApp each other, and raise some fund, at least for short-term purpose. So Muslims are turning to their faith for hope and inspiration. Again, in terms of how do we handle the elderly in this during this difficult period. Quran we have been commanded, is what Quran have said, Surah Al-Aqaf verses 15. We have commanded people to honor their parents. So honoring parent is like a very core value of the Muslims. So Imam Ibn Kathir commented on this first, saying that to honor elderly ihsan is to do good and show affection and compassion to them. In fact, there have been multiple and frequent reminders within the Quran and the prophetic tradition to honor our parents and elderly. So it is important that we do not let this challenging time hinder us from fulfilling our obligation to help and to support our elderly. Now, the other thing, your Lord has commanded, this is another verse I take from the Quran. Your Lord has commanded you worship none but him, and that you be kind to your parents. If one or both of them reach old age with you, do not say to them a word of disrespect, or scold them, but say generous word to them, and act humbly to them in mercy and say, my Lord, have mercy on them, since they cared for me when I was small. And of course, there's a lot of prayers. Constant praise is a sign of sincere love. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, again said, he is not one of us, he is not of us who does not have mercy on young children nor honor the elderly. So all this has been our guiding principles that help the Muslims, young and old, to take care of their elderly. Now, these reminders inspire strong motivation, such as the saying of the Prophet again, the best of the deeds is the observance of the prayer at its proper earliest time and kindness to the parents. This is by Sahih Muslim. Now, theoretically, as I mentioned earlier, zakat is very important. Zakat is our charity tax, and we have, these are some of the things that we have done to ease the difficulties of some families and some elderly during the difficult period. I think with that, I would like to thank you very much for being wonderful audience. Thank you, and I hope we will be able to unpack some of the discussion for future deliberation. Thank you very much. Thank you, Shireen. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bibijan, for this very comprehensive overview of how our elderly are affected and which segments of the elderly particularly are the ones that we should possibly focus on, and what it means for the caregivers who are also just as affected, and the sort of coping mechanisms that the Muslims have had. It was a very comprehensive sharing, and we'd like to thank you for it. And we are hoping that the discussions will continue ongoing, both on the Facebook comments as well as the Zoom chat. Next up, I'd like to invite Mr. Devanand, who will present us with his thoughts from the Hindu perspective. Mr. Devanand, please.
Thank you, Dr. Bibi, and thank you, Sherin. Namaste, everyone. First of all, on behalf of the Hindu Hub, I would like to express my sincere thanks to Harmony Center who has organized this series of talks based on very relevant topics. Today's topic is especially about positive aging during the pandemic. And I would like to add here, even beyond the pandemic, because I'm here to talk about how faith, in particular, Hinduism, can contribute to positive aging. Before I go into the specifics, let's understand what positive aging is. It is a process one inculcates in keeping fit and healthy, maintaining a positive attitude, and engaging fully in life. We are going to see how the process of positive aging is recommended by the Hindu scriptures. Before I go further, it is important that I share some basic knowledge of Hinduism in order to understand positive aging from that perspective. We need to establish the fact that Hinduism is not a religion per se. It doesn't have a single founder, a single scripture, or a single god. It doesn't follow a specific routine of worship or a specific way. It's or a specific way of life. It is simply a way of life. For example, there may be differences among the practices of Hindus all around the world, even your neighbor, but the concept or the value system is all based on one single order, which is called dharma. Dharma can be simply defined as the order by which all of us should align to in order to harmonize with the laws of nature, which are guided by the Hindu scriptures. Over thousands of years, the Indic civilizations have evolved with Dharma as a basis, creating social structures so that everyone, regardless of where they belong to, fulfill their duties diligently, thereby keeping in harmony with the universe, the world, the society, the family, and thyself. In ancient India, there are four stages of life, of which the first three are the standards in even today's society. The first stage, all of us have gone through this, the life of a student. The second, life of a householder. The third, life after retirement. And the last one, which is rare in today's society, and also it's an optional stage, which is the path of renunciation. In ancient India, the householder would slowly transition into retirement, handing over the household responsibilities, pursuing a more ascetic lifestyle. After the birth of their grandchildren, the couple would then retire into the forest, leaving all their possessions behind, taking only the minimum with them, and that too to fulfill their duties by conducting the fire operations. The retirees are termed as forest hermits or anchorites, and their lifestyles were consistent among the four surviving Dharma Sutras by Apastamba, Gautama, Baudayana, and Vashishta. These law manuals were written around 500 BCE. Then we quote the Dharma Sutra of Baudayana, the book 2, chapter 11, verse 14 to 15, to understand more about the lifestyle. It says, a forest hermit lives in conformity to the treatise on anchorites. An anchorite should live in the forest, subsisting on roots and fruits, given to austerities, and bathing at dawn, noon, and dusk. Having kindled the hermit fire, that means the desire to renounce, to leave their family and to retire into the forest, he shall refrain from eating what is grown in a village, pay homage to gods, ancestors, spirits, humans, and seers, and entertain guests from all classes. He may also avail himself of the flesh of animals killed by predators. He should not step on plowed land or enter a village. He should wear a matted hair and clothes of bark or skin, and never eat anything that has been stored for more than a year. So these were the practices which I'm talking about, like almost 2,000 years ago. We may find all these practices irrelevant now, but not if we examine the purpose of such practices. The objective of retiring into forests back then is to isolate oneself from the society so that the retirees can focus their time towards austerities. Moreover, the retirees didn't have to work for food because there's plenty of them in the forms of fruits and leaves in the forest. Usually, the householders would be around the age of 50 when the time comes to retire, And that was possible because marriages were conducted at a much younger age. And it was possible to attain with grandparenthood, which is a signal for you to retire by the age of 50. In today's society, the retirement age is around 65, which would then directly qualify the retiree as an elderly, correct? So, despite the evolution of civilization, the practices and culture, the dharma or the role of the retiree or elderly in this case has remained the same, which is why the recommended lifestyle of the Dharma Sutras for the elderly is closely associated with the subject today, positive aging. The goal of the elderly at this stage is to focus inwards. Now, what do I mean by this? The elderly have spent their entire life working hard to get a sustainable job, getting married to start a family, buying an HDB flat, paying the mortgage, toiling day and night to feed and educate a family, working extra hard to climb up the social ladder. These are the responsibilities of a householder, no doubt, and they should be done diligently. The entire life of the householder has been about seeking material wealth and sensory pleasures to maintain a contented family and establish a good stature in society, which is very important. This is a lifestyle from which one should retire from when transitioning into retirement. The reasons are clear, which are obvious. It's all due to physical mobility and the elderly's physical and mental health issues, which are very well researched common ailments of the elderly. The recommended lifestyle of the Dharma Sutras propose three areas of focus for the elderly. They are dietary restrictions, performing fire oblations or worships, and lastly, upasana. Upasana is a Sanskrit word which means sitting near to myself, bringing my attention towards my inner self. Upasana mainly consists of meditation practices. Traditionally, after retiring into forests, the elderly has to survive on roots, leaves, and fruits, basically organic food. It means that you should not be eating what you used to eat when you were an householder. If you go to our Ministry of Health's Health Hub page, you can find useful tips on the recommended diet for the elderly, which involves cutting down on grains and meat and increasing on intake of fruits and vegetables. This directly improves the physical well-being of the elderly. One of the major activities proposed by the Dharma Sutras for the elderly is the worship of the deities, which is called puja in Sanskrit. The steps of the puja resemble very closely to the steps a Hindu would undertake when he invites a very important guest to his house. The deity is considered as a very important guest, and the altar is a reception area adorned with the beauty and fragrance of flowers and incense, filled with offerings of fresh fruits, sweets, praises for the deity, and the one conducting the puja seeks the deity's blessing for his inner purification. The Hindu scriptures strongly recommend that every Hindu should perform the puja daily without fail, and it becomes a duty to do so. Congregational worship in temples, like going to the temples, is not a must, but daily puja at one's home is mandatory. And this becomes an important aspect in the Hindu's life, which would carry on until his death. Therefore, pandemic or no pandemic, everyone, including the elderly, stays at home to perform the puja. Then puja becomes the one main activity for the elderly. The spiritual connection between thyself and the deity becomes stronger by the day. Apart from the spiritual connection itself, the steps in the puja requires low impact physical movements, hand-eye coordination, and involves repetitive steps, which are good practices to maintain hand dexterity and hand-eye coordination, which are some of the physical ailments experienced by the elderly. The mental health is further improved by performing upasana, such as meditation. If you Google search meditation and mental health, you will find several research papers and scholarly articles on the subject. Most of them say that there is a positive correlation between meditation and mental health. There are studies which suggest that meditation reduces anxiety and depression levels, and it also improves some aspect of cognition and reduces the risk of developing dementia. The ancient Hindus devised these stringent lifestyles for the retiree so that this prepares them physically and mentally to take on the more challenging lifestyle of a renunciate. Though renunciation is optional, the goal of the retirement stage is still relevant, which is to sustain and improve physical and mental well-being. After all the years of working hard to provide for their families and society, retirement is one stage where the elderly should be relieved from family and societal commitments and spend more time improving their physical and mental well-being. With the aging population in Singapore on the rise, we can foresee more retirement and nursing homes coming our way. However, majority of our elderly would still continue to live with their children and within the society. Working adults might also need the help of their aged parents to perform certain duties, such as providing care for their children. Nevertheless, both the working adults and their aged parents, which are the elderly, should be very clear with their goals. While the working adults try to contribute to their family and the society, it should also include the elderly. The elderly should also be aware of their duties, which is primarily to involve in activities to promote their physical and mental well-being, and not mainly involving in the domestic and societal affairs. When everyone is truly aware of their own roles and responsibilities, the social structure would continue to run smoothly. This was the vision of the Dharma Sutras, which led to the flourishment of the Indian civilizations. In the present, this is where Hindu organizations should come together and offer support, such as religious counseling services for the elderly, promoting awareness of eating healthy and guided meditation courses. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Devanand. That was a very interesting sharing, definitely, to learn more about the different stages in a person's life and what it means to go through a life of retirement and what the seniors from ancient traditions such as Hinduism would recommend for our elderlies to do. Of course, with the change of context, I would be very interested to find out more about how we can extract some of these lessons uh, to really suit today's living conditions. Like, as you mentioned, the elderly's diet can be mainly vegetables and fruits, how they worship their deities and how that can be done today, and what meditation can then be done, as you mentioned, with the guided meditation that the Hindu community can then guide their elderly, and that too may have to be done online, and so we have to deal with also technological and digital issues as well. So very interesting sharing, and we will open the floor to discussion. But before I do that, it is time for a quick poll meant for our audiences, both on Zoom as well as Facebook. A link will be shared with you right now. Please go to the link and leave your comments for us. This poll is really a platform where you can share with us some of your sentiments on how you feel about the topic that we are sharing today. Um, as you share with us generously, however, do not stop continuing to share your comments on the comment section on Facebook as well as the Zoom chat box. Now I turn my attention to our discussants in the next segment. Now that Dr. Bibi and Mr. Devanand have given us their sharings and their thoughts and have shared with us what it's like for the Muslims and their coping mechanisms and their resources, as well as some of the lessons that we can learn from Hinduism with how the seniors can really find resilience mentally and spiritually. The next segment is to invite our discussants to join us and give their thoughts and comment on the sharings that were done. Tonight we have Rabbi Mordecai Abigail as well as Sister Geraldine Tan. Rabbi Mordecai was born in Paris and he was raised in Brussels, and he pursued his studies in the United States, highly multicultural. He received his rabbinical ordination and BA in Jewish theology in 1992. Very quickly, he moved to Singapore in 1994. He joined the Jewish community here, and he continues to serve the Jewish community as their spiritual leader. He oversees all the educational, social, and religious needs of the community. He also assists the small Jewish communities in the Southeast Asia where may require their help with religious needs throughout the year. He's also currently serving as a council member of the Interreligious Organization, the IRO, of which he was a past chairman in 1997. In that capacity, he has participated in many interfaith events and has contributed much to the discourse. Sister Geraldine is the executive director of St. Joseph Home under the Catholic Welfare Services. Together with the sisters and a team of staff and volunteers, they minister to the sick, the elderly, and those with advanced illnesses. Before I invite them to share with us,
I should be about 5-10 minutes. I'm going to go down to the office. It's okay?
sorry.
5-10 minutes?
Before I invite them to share with us, I'd like to thank all of those who have completed the poll so far. Thank you so much. Please keep it coming. At the same time, I would like to hear your thoughts and experiences, so continue to ask your questions on the Facebook comments as well as the Zoom chat. So without further ado, let me check. Rabbi Mordecai, are you ready to go? You may need to unmute. Yes.
Okay. Sorry for this little lapse.
No worries.
Here we are. Thank you very, very much, first of all, for the wonderful work that you do at the Harmony Center. And it's very, very heartening, very inspiring and very uplifting to be involved into this effort in a multi-pronged approach involving a multi-faith approach, which gives our participants a completely different perspective on how to cope, especially with a crisis like this of COVID-19, which I have to say in some places it's a crisis. In other places, it's a crisis that's turned, unfortunately, into a tragedy. And I have to say as well that speaking from a very, very personal standpoint, my parents still live in Belgium. And, ever since we've been affected with COVID-19, I've been unable to see them, which has caused them a tremendous amount of heartache, obviously, to be so disconnected. So I think this is something that hits home very much, when you have elderly parents and you try to do what's best for them in terms of the physical and emotional and spiritual well-being. And I think that when it comes to the Jewish approach of how to deal with our elderly and how to deal with this crisis from a spiritual point of view, I think it's important to understand a few basic ideas. The whole point of Judaism really is that it's a way of life which is experienced not only through intellectual and emotional means, which means to say a connection that is an intellectual connection or emotional connection. Of course, you have that as well. But I think primarily Judaism is a deed-centered religion, which means to say it's a religion that's based on a number of commandments that we observe, which shape every aspect of our life, which mold us into the people that we are in every single one of our activities, down to the routine of every day. And so whether it's the food that we eat, where we dress, the whole idea is to see meaning and purpose in everything. It's to invite God's presence in everything that we do to reveal God's presence and the purpose of creation in everything that we do. And so, in that respect, I think what's important to understand here is that the Jewish home to us is the epicenter of spirituality. Everything, everything that we gain in terms of our spiritual acumen is gained primarily in the home, not so much in the synagogue, in the house of worship. Of course, we rely on religious instruction in the synagogue, in the house of worship, or other religious institutions. But I think where we get the spiritual nurturing that's going to last us a lifetime is actually in the home. That's where it starts. And so really what happened with COVID-19 is that all of a sudden, you know, for a while at least, the synagogues, the houses of worship were closed. But I think what we were pushed to do, what this motivated us to do, is to look inward, to build our spiritual strength, and to build that spiritual resilience by really focusing on some very basic aspect of what it means to believe in God. You know, in other words, believe in God is something that is a very abstract idea, but you can actually bring it down to the concrete and tangible, and to give it expression in sometimes in very difficult moments where you literally entrust in a very vulnerable time, you entrust your life in God's hands. And so I think that's the idea of the Jewish home. I think that the return to the Jewish home in a time like this, in a time of crisis, when we experience something that has upended life as we know it, I think it's really, really important to understand that what stays intact is the soul of a person, and that needs to be nurtured and be taken care of. One of the very basic principles that we have in Judaism is that the human being is essentially a spiritual being that is at times, or maybe you might say often, involved in physical activities. But a human being is, I don't think we would do justice to the human being if we would define a human being as a physical being that is involved sometimes in spiritual activities. So this is really where the focus is. What are we? So I choose to say and to define a human being as a spiritual being primarily. I think that when we inculcate this very simple idea, even to a child, I think that changes that reframes really everything that you go through if you can communicate this idea successfully. Another thing which I think is paramount in our faith is how you define religion. Now, usually religion is defined as this idea that you pray to God when you need him. You want a relationship with God, so you need God, so you pray to him. But really, in the Jewish religion, there's much, much more than that. It's not only that I need God, it is also, most importantly, that God needs us, which is why he created us. Because maybe he was very happy before he created the universe, right? Why is it that he desires the existence of a human being? Why is it that there's such focus on humanity as the crown jewel of creation? And that is because he wants us as partners in creation, in transforming the world, in revealing the light of God's presence in the world. Again, in everything that we do, literally everything that we do. So the very first sentence that we say as Jews when we wake up is Modeh ani lefanecha. We thank God for restoring back to us our soul that gives us our physical vitality. And after this, after having made that statement, we begin our day with everything else that we do. But I think that I think that when it comes to the elderly, what we do as children, to go back to that, because I think that's really, really important to have this frame of reference before we get to speak to what it is that we will endeavor to do when it comes to taking care of our elderly and the aged in our community. It's that we're going to find every way possible to strengthen that spiritual identity. So let me give you an example. We just now, a few weeks ago, celebrated the Jewish New Year, which in very quick succession brought about the Day of Atonement. And just a few days ago, we finished our festival of booths or tabernacles. It's called the Festival of Sukkot. It's a biblical festival, very joyous festival. Many of our elderly were not able to attend. So how do you get them to be involved? And many of them really crave the experience of these festivals, of these holy days in to have that physical interaction and to observe rituals and so on and so forth. And so what we do, because we have many restrictions in Judaism about not using any electrical appliance during the Sabbath and festivals, so on and so forth, which basically means to say, during the entire duration of the festival, you're totally disconnected from your loved ones. And so, there are different approaches to Judaism. That there's some who say that it's okay to use the Zoom on festivals, the Sabbath, so on and so forth. Of course, that's I guess you might say I'm a bit biased because that's not at all the Orthodox approach, but of course, that's a tremendous challenge. And so what I did, I can only tell you what I did with my parents, is that before the festival began, we had a Zoom call. And although it's a very hectic time, right? The hours before the festivals. But what we did was to prepare ourselves, if it was possible, the day before. But if not, just a few hours before, we took time, about an hour, to get a connection where we could speak with our parents and having all the grandchildren around, and for them to receive a blessing and to sing a song of our liturgy, of our prayers, and to share maybe an insight too, and having my father, my mother share with with our kids something which is of relevance to them. And oddly, ironically, it was actually my parents who tried to uplift and how do you call it, and inspire the children, to make them understand that COVID is not the end of it, that it's a challenge, that is something that we need to overcome, and that that ultimately our faith in God is, again, not just about something that is abstract, but it's something that's very real, and that can really help us to overcome everything if only we put our mind to it. And so, by having this experience before a festival with parents, by involving them in our life, and by them understanding that we are, certainly have not forgotten them, but that in fact we need them, that they're really a bridge to us, they're a bridge to generations past, and they're a bridge to an ancient and glorious heritage and history, that they're basically a link that goes all the way back to us, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, our forefathers. And parents are very heartened. The elderly, I think, are very heartened by that. Sometimes, you have situations where elderly are totally alone, left alone. And so the question is, they might not have children or grandchildren, unfortunately. We have some of those in our community. And so during the time when we had the circuit breaker, what we would do is to call over the telephone, to have conversations, which we try to really stretch. We try to really invest time and effort into really fleshing out the issues that went through their mind, and to make sure that we left no stone unturned, to think out of the box, to see how we can really make a difference in the life of these people. Another insight, which I don't know how much time I have, please do. I'll take my cues from you in terms of how much time I have to speak. I'm very bad with the timing, but just wanted to add that another thing which is really important when it comes to especially our relationship with our parents, especially when they're elderly, is to understand that the respect that we owe our parents is really somehow a way for us. When we respect our parents, it's a way for us to also express the love and the respect that we have for the Almighty Himself. And so that's really interesting that out of the 10 commandments, you know, if you actually look in the 10 commandments and the tablets of the law, you'll find that the first 5 commandments have to do with our relationship with the Almighty, which means 5 commandments that govern our connection to God. There are another 5 commandments that pertain to our interpersonal relationships, right? Such as not to steal and not to kill, and so on and so forth. But when it comes to honor your father and mother, it's actually in the first 5. And of course, our commentaries ask and say, well, it should really be in the second set of 5 commandments. And the way that we look at it in our tradition is that it is impossible for you to have gratitude to God if you cannot show gratitude to your parents. The gateway to show gratitude and respect and honor to God, to the Almighty Himself, is really gauged and measured and assessed through the way that you actually would show and express, convey the respect to your own parents. I think that's something that we always put before us, you know, when we contemplate and reflect about what is the best way for me to have an elderly uncle, an elderly parent feel happy. How can I, you know, go out of my way to give them that feeling of warmth and love? How do I do it in the best possible way? I think, you know, this is what's before me, is that somehow parents are partners with God in creating a human being, right? God is allowing a man and woman to actually bring about a new life, but ultimately God is also a partner in all this. And so this is, I think, the challenge really here is for most people that have a career, that have a job, that have sometimes a crushing burden of providing for their families, and with all the pressures, especially during this time, with all the pressures that are involved in, you know, to make sure that we have a livelihood. I think it is very, very difficult to put our mind to think how to honor and respect our elderly and our parents properly. It's a real challenge. And so, you know, it goes both ways, you know, how the elderly will make an effort to, you know, to take matters in their own hands, so to speak, you know, to find the strength, the fortitude to deal with this crisis. I think to us who are the caregivers, to us who are the children, to us who are the, you know, the younger relatives, I think it is really a duty for us that not a day should go by that we do not at least think at least half hour, how is it that we can actually help our parents, how we can help our elderly relatives and make a difference in their lives, and also the elderly in our community. You know, it's not just about your family, it's also about those that are outside of your family, that is to say in your community, the community at large, and also in society at large. So I think, you know, those are the very basic ideas that I wanted to share with you, and also to mention, quite interestingly, that, you know, I'll end up with this, and then I'll give over the floor to the moderator. But there's something really interesting about the special tree called the sequoia tree, and some sequoia trees can actually reach 350 feet, a height of 350 feet. Some of them can be 3,500 year old. Imagine something that lived through the days of Moses, right? That's how old some of these trees can be. And you would expect a sequoia tree to actually have very deep roots, also running tens of feet deep. And what's really amazing to see is that the roots of sequoia do not go deep, they actually go wide on the side. And so the way that the sequoia tree can actually stand strong, even in the greatest of storms, it's by actually interlocking their roots with the roots of the tree next to it, because those roots grow from the side by the width. And so really, I think that's exactly what it is that we have to become in a time like this. We have to become sequoia trees. We have to bind together and reaching from the sides to spread the net as much as we can. And not to forget one thing, you know, in Hebrew, the word for life is chayim. Chayim in Hebrew, actually, oddly, is not a life in the singular, it's a life in the plural. In Hebrew, you don't have a word for an individual life. You only have a word for many lives in the plural. And the question is, why is that? You know, you, like in any language, you have a word for everything in the singular and the plural. But the reason why the word for life in Hebrew is in the plural to begin with is to basically convey the simple idea that a life does not really amount to much if it cannot be shared with others. An idea of a life is that it really has meaning insofar as we give and share, certainly with our parents, certainly with our family, and of course, everyone else around us. And so on this idea of life, I'd like to wish all of us that we should have an amazing life ahead of us, a life full of happiness and health and blessings, materially and spiritually. Thank you again very, very much for inviting me. And I look forward, God willing, to the next opportunity.
Thank you very much, Rabbi. That was very good sharing and a very exciting sharing to learn more about the Jewish perspective on how we deal with the crisis. And I think we all agree that there is a lot of similarities between all of the religious traditions, really, when it comes to respect of parents. And I think from the Hindu perspective and some other non-Abrahamic faith traditions, there is a belief that similar, like what you said, we are all one. You know, we are all interdependent, and my parents and your parents are really also my parents, and we should see the divine in each and every one of us, which is the breath of the divine in each individual soul. And that makes your parents my parents, and Mr. Devanand's parents my parents. And when we say community and interlocking and interdependence, these really go a long way, and they're not really lip service. And when we manage to translate that to our lived reality, the sharing becomes beautiful, and the tree may go as long as it can. Thank you very much for your sharing. I'd like now to invite Sister Geraldine to give us her perspective on what has been shared so far, and a little bit more perspective from the Christian faith. Sister Geraldine, you may want to unmute your mic, sister. Thank you.
I'm very touched by all the sharing, really, and it's a respect for my faith in the Christian's perspective. The respect for life is not dependent on the age. It dependent on the start of conception. So it is not whether you are 100 or 2, it's not the value. The value is in life itself. Because we are born, we are made in the image of God, and we are all children of God. So from the beginning of conception, that is the value of our life, not in the age. The age itself brought to us the wisdom, the respect of our parents, which is universal, to respect our parents because they have given life to us. We are the fruit of their life. So in all faith, we all usually respect our parents. They're growing old. And growing old itself in the space of our faith is actually a vocation. Old age came from God because it's a blessing of a long life, and old age will lead us to God. So with this crisis, it has brought humanity together as a family. Your suffering become mine, because this is the first time we have the whole world in unison. You know, we have how many COVID and all this, and everyone, it seems to be united in that faith. And I came from a congregation that have Christ crucified as our symbol. Christ crucified. Who on earth do you have a Christ crucified? It is a God that has been rich, who came down on earth to be poor like us in order to teach us how to love. It's the greatest love. And it shows us to how to depend on what? To depend on others. We cannot live alone. We have to be interdependent on each other. Whatever faith we are, we have to coexist. And that's something that COVID has taught me too. You know, we all love is in all the religion. In all the religion, you will find love. But love itself has no religion. It just embraces everybody who need help, who is suffering. So my God has also taught me about dependence on others. So he came, he has no place for birth, he has a stable. When he died on the cross. Something simple, something good. Where was he buried? He was buried in a borrowed tomb. Everything he has to depend on others, not of his faith. He has not been chosen to be born in a palace. So in all this, he has taught us humility. So COVID itself has also humbled me to see how resilient the older people are in Singapore. And I must say that I'm very proud of them. They have done their best, from learning to wear their surgical mask, from sister, how far is the social distancing? Can you draw for me on the floor? And things, you know, they are open to learn in order to save. And I said, even in the nursing home itself, you ask, it is yes. I think I cannot be visited by my families, but this is a sacrifice I can make in order to keep the home safe. I am proud of them because they have given themselves, they have really done all these things, and the joy that they had in communicating through videos and all this. And they give a good part of their life, zooming, and so you can see the whole family by themselves. You know, it's so interesting to see all of them during the circuit breaker. And these are people who enjoy the family. My sister, I look forward for that whole family in there rather than one person to visit me. So for them, they have switched, they have actually adapted themselves to the crisis. Crisis has made us, as Dr. Bibi said, it has made us refocus, revisit many of our things that we have taken for granted. So I would say that it has helped us to go in depth into things that we need to see, into things that we need to restructure, into things that we need to a new norm that we need to live. And I'm also very proud of the older person is because they begin to help one another. You know, when we have to be nursed in a different zone, they are not supposed to visit each other. And they help one another and they say, no, it is a crisis now, but we want to stay together, work together. And if you need, you want to help one another to grow together. And God itself, you know, we have also missed our, like Vivian was saying, we miss our time going to church. Everything is in Zoom and all this. But the psalmist in our gospel will say, if God is within, it cannot be shaken. God is within us. God is not in that place, in that place. It is within us. And at this crisis, the God within us has to grow. It has to nurture. It has to reach out. You cannot find a place and then you worship. But it is all this online and all this that create us in order to make that God alive within us that we may have taken for granted. But it cannot be shaken. God is within and it cannot be shaken. And with the resident that the older people that asked, he said, you know, when we cannot see, when we cannot read, what do we do? When we cannot see, we cannot read. We have the spiritual eyes to feel people that love us, to feel people that appreciate us. And that is very important for us. And so what they cannot see, we give them the touch. What they cannot do, we give them a different thing. So honoring the parents, not only, I would say not only my parents, the older people who are older than me. It can be my parents, your parents will be my parents. So it is the universal parenthood that we want to love. So I feel during this crisis, in 8-9 months, and I really feel that I have grown in a cell of seeing things at a different perspective. And when we think about old age and all this, there are things about retirement and all this, but I find that it is not necessary retirement. I'll put it as a retirement, changing of our tires, for a different kind of lifestyle. And maybe we are older, our weight is different, our health is different. So we retire ourselves in order to go forward. So it is the retirement, changing of our views of whatever it is. So it is going to crisis that also cause loneliness, helplessness, and I would say boredom in some of those who stay in their own home. I think it had brought together young people to reach out to them. Through a crisis, many of us have grown. People have been touched by compassion. And I said that I would say these are opportunity for us to be more human. More human, when we smell the poor, we touch the poor, we become poorer, and we become more compassionate. So I think God has given us, for myself in the gospel itself, to reach out. And these are the ones to reach out to. And it has made us more effective, I think effective evangelizer to go out to reach out to anyone that we can see that need help. There will be more things to come. People will be retrenched, job will be taken, lifestyle have to be changed. And these are a lot of bereavement and grief that will be going on. And that's where mental health have to come in, the support, and which is quite, I would say I feel proud of our own country to really see each step at a time, and an organization like that to unite our faith together, to see what is best to see. But I still believe that the God is within us and it cannot be shaken. I don't believe that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sister Geraldine. I pick up on the ideas of universal parenthood, universal humanity, the need for service, which is the outreach and the interlocking of the tree roots so that we all can support one another as we go through this, so that each of us can really stand tall with every person's support. This is in line with what Rabbi has mentioned, and this is also in line with what Mr. Deva has also mentioned, particularly when he talks about the stage of retirement and the need to go inward and to remember the base essence of why we are here. So in one sense, in one hand, it is the connection with our brothers and sisters in humanity and our service to them. And on the other hand is our connection with the divine and the worship of the deities, as well as the meditation, so that we can remain focused on what is really important. So these are all various aspects that really boost our immunity to crisis, that does not shake our branches too easily. And this is all very important. We all agree, even Dr. Bibijan has mentioned this in her remarks. Both the personal resilience is important, as well as the community outreach and service and support. I am going to ask, open a question from the floor that will shed a different perspective, or may ask us to think a bit broader. Now, we have a question that says, thank you very much, panelists, for all your sharings. In a secular Singapore, we're all speaking from our faith perspective, but from a secular Singapore perspective, where there may not be forests and hermitages for the elderly to retire to, right? What would then our advice be for non-religious elderly, and how can they cope mentally? So the question really is about, within a secular context, such as our society, how can the non-religious people find the resources for mental resilience, spiritual resilience, and how can we support them from a faith perspective. I'd like to open the floor to maybe Mr. Deva would like to comment.
Yeah, sure. It's a brilliant question, because I think Singapore is a secular country. We have people of a lot of different faith living together, and not all are subscribed to a certain faith, right? So, if you ask me my personal opinion, okay, and I would also say I think I'm safe to say it's the opinion of Hinduism as well. Um, so, what is important here, as I said, the entire tradition is based on dharma. I mentioned in my speech. Dharma is an order which actually is in line with the universal orders. So that's why along the years, Hinduism has evolved with the time and the place. Okay. So right now, if you ask me, of course, there's no forest hermitages. Even if there is, no one is going to retire there. Correct. And I also say that we are going to coexist together. The society, the entities are going to stay with us. The most important thing is one should understand. Like I'm already like in the mid of my householder, term. Okay, I mean I've already kept my retirement stage. What I'm going to do, I think everyone should focus on that. They should know when to say. They should know when to stop. And I think this starts at a very young age, based on the value system. You don't have to be religious to inculcate a value system. I think that's a job of the parents, and it's important to know when to acquire wealth, when to enjoy, and it's important to understand your body, and you should know when to stop and when to retire. So the transition is seamless. So all this involves pre-planning. Singapore, we are very fortunate to be in Singapore because I think there's plenty of resources available, and we have a lot of professionals there, to guide you, especially about mental health. It's well spoken, well researched subject, and Singapore is doing a great deal promoting awareness among the elderly as well. It's the duty of the younger one, the children, to explain these to the elderly. The elderly may not know, may not be tech savvy, but the householder, their main responsibility role is not only to take care of their own family and kid, but also to take care of the society. And a man's society is to make a safe place for their children and also for the elderly. And so it's a very big responsibility. And I think the religious societies in Singapore, as well as government organizations, should do more to even educate the householder to do this. Yeah, that's my view.
No, agreed, definitely. And it brings us back to the idea of going within and meditating inwardly and seeing God as present at all times within us. And I'd like to add, of course, that, in Singapore, how do you retire? I mean, my father is in his 70s, and despite having children who are more than happy to care for him, and I think this is something that is common in the Muslim community, where we usually contribute part of our income to the care of our parents, and we are capable of taking care of all of his needs. But uh, the society in Singapore here always talks about the need to work. In fact, it's not just the society that tells us this. It has ingrained a part of their thinking that to be an elderly, to be a dignified elderly, you need to be self-sufficient. You need to stand on your own. You don't want to feel as a burden. And so my father will tell me all these things. What am I going to do staying at home? My father is a taxi driver, and he would have been exposed in the midst of the pandemic to all of these high risk exposure. And we've tried to reason with him that he doesn't need to, but sometimes the elderly also may not wish to listen, and it becomes difficult for the caregivers to say otherwise. And sometimes we just have to respect and just say, as you resume your activities, then please do it in a safe manner. There's so much that caregivers can also do. but we need to work, and most of the elderly think so. But even if the elderly say we can do this, they are still experiencing stress and anxiety and exposure to high risk. So as COVID continues on for quite some time, uh, what then can we do, or what advice do we have for the elderly as they continue to labor on, from a community perspective, from a kid's perspective, for them to continue their resilience as this fight continues on for the foreseeable future? Dr. Bibi, would you like to share with us your thoughts?
Shireen. I'd like to, I concur with Dave regarding the need to, I think because Dave mentioned about the need to meditate and all that. I think for the secular community, for people in the secular, because we are in Singapore, we are very secularized. So for those who don't, because we are, Singapore is like a buffet, So there are so many things for different, it's up to us to pick what we want. And we are very blessed, like what Dave said, that we have so much of community resources. If there's one thing I think we should focus on is how to develop this good help-seeking attitude among some people. I think there are some who are very, very resourceful, but there are also some who actually have not, do not know what else to do, where to go and all that. So this is where the service provider would be able to support. I give an example. One organization that look into the welfare of elderly is BRAM. They actually cater for the people who are from all faith group, including people who don't belong to any faith. And I think we are not running out of any ideas as how we can help the pioneer generations, the Merdeka generations. So even with this, we have National Silver Academy. They actually hold all kind of programs to help to educate our elderly in terms of digitalization process and all that. So I think we are quite blessed.
That is very true. Sister Geraldine, would you like to add anything? Maybe share with us how does your work reach out to those who need help? How do you do that, and what resources do you have to reach out to people who need our help?
I mean, we were basically locked down in our own nursing home during the circuit breaker. So we were neither going out nor coming in, but we brought the world into the home. Brought the world into the home, the suffering world into the home. And at each cluster, we show the different ways in which we can reach out. For those who can pray, they pray. For those who cannot, we managed to, together with the staff, sew masks in order to send out to the poor countries. So this was something to speak the same language at the same time. So we managed to do some mass work and things like that, and to distribute it to the different countries. So we brought the pandemic, give a voice to the pandemic, to the resident, that they can contribute something, to do something. So that was how we reach out. And with the people outside the home, I mean, we have people who are in contact. So what we do, we speed up our phone calls, phone calls or video, WhatsApp, to make use of technology in order to reach them. So we reach them, even for myself, when there are people who are dying at home. So the family will say, "Sister, can I turn on so that we can witness the person passing together?" So it was something, yeah, I wish to be there, but we cannot be there. But at least technology has brought us closer. We say our prayer as a family, and we witness it together on the video. So it's something that we have to do it in a time that is so abnormal. We have to really let the abnormality bless our life. That's all, at this stage.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sister Geraldine. Indeed, the only thing we can do is to try and find different ways and creative ways to reach out to those who need us in their times of need and times of vulnerability. And that's exactly Dr. Bibi's point, where the service providers will have to find the ways to bring, as Sister Geraldine says, bring the suffering home and ease it in whatever way we can. Thank you so much, everyone, for your profound sharing. I will not be able to take any more questions, but I'd like to thank all those who've asked questions on Facebook as well as Zoom. We will try to find means and ways to respond to you, perhaps by next week, if possible. I'd like now to move on to the next and last segment of today's discussion. If I could invite our speakers and discussants, and at this junction, I'd like to let everyone know that Rabbi Mordecai sends his regards. Unfortunately, he had to leave us. He has some business to attend to, but I'd like to invite our discussants and panelists who are here today to share with us just one main takeaway that they'd like the community and the audience and all our viewers everywhere to really meditate on and digest and reflect on further as we move on from this discussion and into our lives as we continue to take care of our elderlies and ourselves and everyone around us. Maybe I'd like to start with Dr. Bibi Jan.
I think one of the things that is very critical here, I see this a commonality in the coping, the way we all cope with in our respective faith group, whether we do puja, we go prayer, in the word of Rabbi just now that the home is the epicenter. So I think I like to see how we can make our home is really a mini heaven, literally for all of us, not just for the children, for everybody in the whole family. I think if every one of us can have that kind of perception that the well-being of the whole community, we start with the home, we put our home in order, with everybody is responsible, I think we'll be able to we will be able to have this for the whole entire community. So home is the most important factor, and everyone have to play their roles to promote the well-being of everybody. That's it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bibi. I would move on now to Mr. Devanand.
Okay. So the main takeaway is here, what I would like to, really suggest, our elderlies are like children, and I really want to stress the point that the householders, people like me, they have a very big responsibility, and to take care of the elderly like how they used to take care of us. I think you don't need any religions to come and tell you that. I think you just need to be human to understand that, and sad to see there's a lot of elderlies we see in the streets of Singapore, picking cardboards and cans. I think that it's not really acceptable in the society here. I think we need to be more humane in that aspect and share our knowledge with the elders, when time progresses. I think this is one thing that I would like to share with everyone who's present for this TikTok session. Thank you. You have to unmute.
So we have Dr. Bibi said the home, and you mentioned the caregivers are very important. And move on to Sister Geraldine.
The young and old have to coexist in order to give life. And I also want to say that an old person is really full of priceless gift if we know how to see, feel, and listen to their perspective. Their aging process may irritate us sometimes because there are little things that they do, but it draws patience from us and draw compassion. We are here in order to make us wise. That's all.
Thank you so much, Sister Geraldine. So that is also on how the fact that we honor our parents and the elderly amongst us, and to see us as a golden gem and a resource, how Rabbi Mordecai has also emphasized. Um, so these are our main takeaways. Home is the epicenter, our mini heaven on earth. The caregivers who are at home need to exercise empathy, compassion, and remember that our parents have taken care of us when we were young and also taught us a lot of things. And it's time to also teach them things patiently, and to remember to work together, because it always takes two hands to clap. Thank you so much, dear esteemed and respected panelists, for this great discussion tonight on the role of each of us, as well as the service providers, as well as the need to both be in touch with ourselves, with the divine and everyone around us, because we are all one. And I hope that this discussion will continue on, and we will continue to reflect on it. And it will encourage us to really keep a lookout as much as possible for any signs that anyone around us seems to need help. If they are not able to ask for help, at least we can up our radar a bit so that we can extend help when we feel that there is a need. Just asking a simple question, picking up the phone, asking a simple question, how are you doing, perhaps goes a very, very long way. These are some of the best practices, and the most important thing is that we learn from each other and we adapt what is good among ourselves, so that as a society, all of us can really move and progress ahead as a nation. And we would then also be making the lived experience of our seniors and ourselves as good as it can be during such difficult time. And with that, we come to the end of today's session. To everyone out there, thank you very much for participating in our poll. It is time now to help us by filling up the evaluation form. Keep the discussions coming. You may just scan this QR code for the evaluation form, and you may continue to participate in our poll, which is still open. As you take some time to do our evaluation, I'd like to do a shout out for next week's session. So next week, we will be having our last episode of the HA TikToks, same time, same place. And next week, we will then be talking about family and tension. All this talk is very nice and well, but like Sister Geraldine said, sometimes there are some things that irritate us and naturally tension arises. So how do you restore faith when the situation gets a little bit too tense until it reaches maybe conflicts and violence? What then can we do? With that, I bid everyone in the audience in our Facebook Live as well as Zoom a very good evening, and see you next week. Thank you very much for a good discussion.
Good night. Thank you. Bye.
Shireen was asking, can we take photograph, camera, just at least for the panelists? I mean, for everybody, but is it too late?
No, it's okay. We will still be here on the Zoom for a while.
Okay.
We promote everyone then.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sister. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Shireen.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure meeting all of you.
Discussion from various aspects that we need to think about. It's not as simple as just taking care of the elderly. I'm going to open the floor to everybody who's in the attendees on the Zoom to come and join us. Everybody can mute yourselves. You can open your cameras if you wish, and